Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Peacemaker Season 2. So yeah, it's not something I do all that often, is do just like a season review of something, or I even hesitate to call this a review. I mean, that's what I'll call it, because I don't know what else to call it, but I started watching Season 2 of Peacemaker maybe a couple of weeks after it started airing, caught up, and then I kept up with it week to week. I really liked the Superman movie that came out this year, and this was obviously set in the same universe, and it was interesting in going back to it. Plus, I had seen Season 1 as well. It's not like I just jumped in here. But it wasn't like Season 1 of Peacemaker was pretty entertaining. But I don't remember leaving it thinking, oh, I can't wait for like more. I can't wait for more of this world. And part of that might have just been my fatigue with superhero stuff in general at the time. But I really liked the Superman movie, so I was a bit more pumped up to see this next part of the universe, as much as it might be a relatively off to the side part of the universe. Although there are some direct connections, which I'll get into. I should probably say first up, I'm going to just go full spoilers on this for the season. If you've not seen Season 2 of Peacemaker, best not to listen to anything of this, because I'm just going to bounce around to whatever I feel like talking about in general. And just to be clear, I didn't watch this because I thought, oh, it's going to be must-see to, like, know, to understand what's going to happen next in the DC universe that they're building. It's not like I was expecting necessarily huge cameos that were going to connect really bigly into the... Bigly? That's a weird way of saying that. Connect properly into things. And if anything, there was more than I thought there were going to be, but that's not really why. I was just in a good mood with this type of thing, and I wanted to dive in. And the characters were always entertaining in the show, and I think that proved true again in Season 2. As far as the plot of the season goes, which was a little slow to start, it takes out a couple of episodes before it really set up what the main focus was going to be, which was the alternate universe. The Earth X is I think what DC fans would refer to it as, because of what it ends up being. And in the comics, there is an Earth in the multiverse that we would call it Earth X, because that's the one where Nazis won and are in charge. And all the superheroes are like evil versions and all the rest of it. So, but that was a reveal quite late in the season, of course. That was like end of episode 6 they finally revealed that. So it was quite late on, especially since all that universe stuff got wrapped up with episode 7. Episode 8 was almost like an epilogue / prologue for what's coming next. So if anything, I almost wish there was a bit more time spent in that universe and a little bit more Nazi killing, I guess would be my critique there. But generally speaking, I was quite happy with like what it was doing with the story. If nothing else, it gave the characters a lot of chances to grow. And I think even when I had some critiques maybe early on, because I was always entertained. Like, I think this show is very entertaining, and the humor tends to land with me. There's a new character that was on this season, played by Tim Meadows, Agent Fleury, who... he just has this like cadence of talking, and he keeps talking about really inappropriate things that was constantly cracking me up. Not to mention the bird blindness being his disability, which was also giving me some chuckles here or there. But I think early on I was enjoying the setup of the multi-universe stuff, and I was enjoying some of the awkwardness of the characters having to work still with Argus and Rick Flag Sr., even though they still want to be friends with Peacemaker. And then obviously you have the whole Peacemaker like having feelings for Harcourt and all that stuff going on. But there was definitely some stuff in the first half of the season where it felt like a few of the characters didn't have as much to do. It felt like Vigilante and ads were just kind of around, right? And they were kind of friends to Peacemaker, but they didn't really have much going on their own. What I really liked about the back half of the season is that once they went all but over to that other universe, it felt like all of a sudden ads and Vigilante got their chance to shine. Like, they became almost the more important characters in that half of the season. And what I mean by that is that obviously ads, being the black woman on the team, obviously had a big kind of moment with the other world all chasing after like zombies and the pool electrocution scene and all that stuff. But that gave her some pretty big moments, and I think what I liked even more than that though was Vigilante. Was obviously he's very funny, right? The running gag that he's a complete little shit to his mother, and thinks that's okay, and he just says the worst things to her. One of my biggest laughs of the season actually might be when his mother starts talking to Harcourt because he's told a lie about Harcourt being his ex-girlfriend and that she's like a total slut, and she keeps saying these things to her, and the way Harcourt turns and looks at Adrian in that scene kind of broke me. It's one of my favorite types of humor, actually, I've discovered, is when a character gets to react to something kind of hilariously awful that another character's done and gets to just stare at them with judgment, because it's usually just this extended period of looking that is just like it'll get funnier and funnier even though the character is just staring with one blank expression. It works for me. There's a really great example in the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that also broke me completely. But so he's very funny, but he didn't necessarily have like a lot of deep character stuff, right? I think he ended up having, other than like Peacemaker's main arc, which was his self-worth and all that stuff, right? Which obviously had a big payoff in the finale. I think him finding himself on the other world, which was also very funny, and him doing the Spider-Man meme and all, him laughing at everything being kind of the same but different. When it gets to the reveal that they're on this evil Earth, right, where Nazis won, what I love so much about the reveal that Vigilante is actually in the Resistance here, it was kind of oddly sweet that he's a hero here. With, like, you know, the version of Harcourt that's here is part of the system. The version of the Peacemaker was here was like, you know, ultra beloved in this community. But Adrian was fighting against all that here. Like, in some ways, he was more of a hero on this Earth than he is in the main Earth. And I thought that was kind of sweet, oddly. And obviously the fact that it leads up to that hilarious moment where he ends up killing Peacemaker's other version of his dad, right after his dad's kind of revealed that he's not really in support of what this world is. And the irony being that in the main Earth, he was a complete piece of shit. In the world where, you know, the good guys won World War II. But in this Earth, he's actually kind of critical of the world around him. And even that's actually kind of deep, because he was a complete, you know, racist and all that, right? From what I remember of Robert Patrick's character in season 1 and how he treated his kids. It's kind of interesting that in the world where his character in theory would be quite happy with this, like actually having it has made him realize like a bunch of things. Because I like when he mentions that he once saw his doppelganger, right? Because we set up the whole pocket universe thing with all the doors, which I thought did neatly kind of tie into the Superman movie, and that this technology exists. And they even bring up that Lex Luthor's version is like an unstable attempt at it. But this technology from the alien, whatever it is like a completely working version that's, relatively speaking, safe to use. I say that because obviously we see them open all the other doors in the season finale and how badly that goes. But I think him saying that he saw his doppelganger once, the one in the main Earth, right, the one that we knew from last season, and that there was something off about him, and it made me scared of what their world was. I think that's a really interesting kind of observation from him, that he just naturally assumed that this other world was worse because the version of himself that he saw was so much worse. He never considered for a second that it was him that was the bad guy in that world. Just like we as the audience and general just assumed he would be bad here. Once we found out what this world was, I think we all kind of assumed that he's just going to be like living in his element. Now, the brother, that's another big part of this, of course, is that the brother's alive here, right? Played by, oh god, I remember the actor's name. David Denman? Anyway, he was on The Office, right? he was also the Red Ranger's dad on like the Power Rangers movie that came out in 2017. So that's where I know his face from. But obviously that's a big part of it for Chris, and a whole big part of his whole self-worth thing, and like trying to make things work in the real world. The season literally starts with him going to a meeting with the Justice Gang. I say a meeting, an audition to try and get onto a superhero team, and he is rejected in a, you know, very comic way. And when I say comic, I mean comedy, not like comic book. because they're bad mouthing him and they don't think they can hear him. And it was fun seeing those two characters from the movie again and all that. But it makes him feel like shit. He walks out with his head hanging. He is depressed, and that is like a running thing throughout the season. And then he's shown this world where his brother and dad are still alive, where the most depressing moments of his life have been erased. And he obviously accidentally kills the other version of himself, and that's the whole thing. But he's given this temptation to the point where one of the theories, other than what it ended up being, was that this other world wasn't even another world. There was people theorizing at the time that maybe this is like some fantasy world that's been designed to trap him, right? It's like giving him everything he wants. He's beloved over here. His family's alive. Everything's happy. Harcourt here actually is interested in him. And obviously we get the fun thing that you get with alternate universes where the actors get to play these different versions of themselves, and we get to see her be the more bubbly, skirt-wearing, and I wouldn't even have pointed that out except for the fact that when they meet our version of Harcourt, the brother keeps bringing up that she was wearing trousers and how weird that is because she never does that. I also love that the reveal that this is actually a Nazi world and that they're all the people who were supposedly villains before probably were actually good guys trying to take down the regime in this world, meaning that much like the Suicide Squad movie, Peacemaker accidentally killed an entire group of good guys again, because that was a big joke in that movie, which I actually rewatched just this past week or so. I was in the mood. I didn't remember it too well, so I went back and watched the movie again. Because the show had put me in the mood for it, so it was just kind of fun going back to that. But that was kind of the same thing, is that in that episode where he goes over to that world and he ends up taking on that terrorist group in the building, and we think they're bad guys. In hindsight, they were going after, they were trying to take down the Nazis. So all of a sudden, it's not that quite this simple black and white anymore, is it? It's a bit more complex. And I do love the joke. I love the joke that he just did not notice because he's that oblivious. I do think that is a funny thing. And everyone just like Harcourt immediately notices it. Obviously, Ads, as soon as she goes outside, is confronted with it. So all that did make for a very good laugh that he just didn't notice because he was getting everything he wants and he's oblivious to everyone else around him. Even though he does have a good heart and he does care about those people and so on. I think the heart of the season, though, is something as simple as them all immediately being like, we have to go get him. Or at least Harcourt says that, and then the others all kind of, join in at a certain point. Like, I think that is, that's the heart of the show, ultimately, is that this weird family of friends have bonded, they've come together, they're a unit now, and the entire season is about them kind of coming to terms with that. And it's why that scene in the finale, and I've seen some mixed opinions on the finale because it is kind of this separate epilogue, prologue type episode. But that scene in the motel room where they give him the pep talk, where Ads specifically gets in his face and tells him how important he is and that he matters, is so well done. It's actually super affecting, way more affecting than I think you might be expecting from this show, quite honestly. It was genuinely really good, and I was affected by it. And then the further payoff, which is when he finally says to Harcourt one more time, "Did that night on the boat mean anything?" Which we finally get to see in the finale. And she says, "Of course it did, you idiot. It was everything." And then what's funny is the song for the season, right? The theme song for the opening titles, the Foxy Shazam song. Because most of the episodes, when it goes to that music, it goes straight into kind of the heavy bit, the little quiet bit beforehand, the little intro isn't there. But because I like the song, I've listened to it a few times since the show started, and I recognized it when it started playing as she was walking away, so I knew it was going to kick into the theme again. And him dancing in the room like it's the best day of his life as the main theme hits, was quite good. It felt like a really nice payoff to everything that we've been doing with his character this season. And the finale does pay off a lot of character stuff. Like, it pays off his self-worth plot and feeling like he belongs somewhere. Harcourt finally, like, maybe being willing to open up and that she maybe deserves something. Obviously, Ads goes back and wraps things up with the wife and sort of breaks that off and is kind of committed to, like, forming something. And I also love the theme that's set up in this final episode with them setting up what turns out to be Checkmate, which is an organization from the comics. This idea that we're not happy with the system that we are in, so we're going to make our own organization to be independent from the system and do things for the right reasons, in theory. I like that, because it also kind of fits into what the other universe was doing, right? It fits into like Peacemaker's dad over on that side. He said he didn't really like the system he was in, it was imperfect, but of course, he just kind of tried to make his life the best it could be inside it. He never tried to change it. He wasn't willing to try and fight it. So you can criticize him for that, but you can kind of acknowledge that he was like in the system that he was in and had to kind of just make the best of it, I guess. And our main characters are saying, no, we know the system we are in is not perfect, and they're actively abusing their power, and they're doing things for the wrong reasons. So we're going to try and combat it. We're going to do our own thing and checkmate. And obviously they have all the money that Adrian's been collecting from drug busts over the years. All of that I really like. And obviously when James Gunn said there's not going to be a Peacemaker season 3, technically, which sounded a lot like when he said there won't be a Superman 2. There is, it's just not called Superman 2, and likewise, we may not call the next thing Peacemaker season 3, but you would imagine that it's going to be called Checkmate, right? That would be the guess. Like he said already that we'll see these characters again and it won't be too long. Now, admittedly, that probably means they're going to pop up in something else, maybe in Lanterns next year, maybe in something else, the Supergirl movie, perhaps. I mean, he has the power to make sure they do sneak up around there, which does actually lead me to one of the interesting things about this show being connected to the rest of this new DCU, and specifically Superman, right? So the two main things we have from this universe, not counting the animated show that they did or whatever, but we have this and we have Superman, and Superman is accurately and correctly this bright, bold, hopeful story. He handled that very well, and it's obviously very family friendly because you want kids to be able to go see Superman. And then you've got Peacemaker, which is full of full frontal nudity, swearing. They're dropping C-bombs in this show. I mean, when Lex Luthor gets his cameo, he's dropping F-bombs. It's kind of wild that they are connected and that there's this tissue between them. I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, just because Superman exists in the world doesn't mean that there's not other parts of the world that are just doing all the same, R-rated shit that they always have been doing. But it's just kind of funny because it's like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I know Marvel have allowed like an F-bomb in a movie or two, right? And I think Deadpool and Wolverine, which I didn't see, I assume there was F-bombs all over that. But, I don't know if they've had this, and they certainly didn't have it right away when they started the universe, I don't think. So it's just interesting to me to see how this kind of works and how it plays out. I mean, the Lex Luthor inclusion was interesting because they actually, like, I straight up, when he said, because he teased it in the episodes, like, I'm going to Belle Reve to see someone, I remembered them saying Lex was going to Belle Reve in the movie, but I thought, there's no way they got him for the show. That it'll be someone else, it'll be maybe one of his lackeys, and we do actually get two of his lackeys in later episodes, but no, it was Lex. They had him, and they set up this idea that he wants to help, because you can, get some benefits out of it, but, it's also kind of corrupting Flag a little bit because he's turning to Lex's ways, and it's kind of maybe setting the stage for how Lex will be in a position to do whatever in the next Superman movie. But it was interesting. Obviously, we had the Justice Gang, and we seem to be setting up some big stuff for the DCU by the end with this Salvation stuff, which is the this world. What they're spending a lot of time doing on the finale is trying to find a world they can use, and Hardcore and the others don't know why they're looking for, what the world they're looking for is going to be used for. Turns out it's going to be a prison for metahumans and anyone else they don't like, which feels again like, Gunn, whether this is coming up in Checkmate or maybe a little bit in the next Superman movie, you can see how political this is getting, this idea of a camp, a prison world representing a prison camp for undesirables. It's pretty in your face, and I like that about it. It's not pulling any punches. The montage of them searching all these worlds was kind of was interesting, actually, because they were just having fun with it. They had the big skulls on the legs, and they had the the cartoony world with the little creatures and all the rest of it. I don't know if any of these are direct references to anything in the comics. Nothing was springing to mind, but there was fun to be had as they were doing that stuff. And they actually kind of seeded that Fleury would maybe want to jump ship by the end, because obviously the ending reveals that him and Judo Master are also on the new Checkmate team, which is fun because they're fun characters and it's nice that they're there. And seeing more of him with Vigilante might be a dream when that happens, but they kind of showed that he was also horrified when they were doing this, and like Flag is dancing with like the bad guys and like cheering and all this on, and he seems to not care anymore about certain things. I've seen some theories that some people think that he's not Flag anymore, that maybe he's Clayface, because it feels like he's shifted character a little bit at the end. I think that might be reaching a little bit. I mean, and the reason why I think it's reaching is because of the very final cliffhanger. I think that ending where he puts Peacemaker in the other world and says, "You're the guinea pig to see what this does to people," I think that must be him, or it doesn't make any sense. Like that final moment doesn't make sense if it's not still really him. To me, him not responding when Harcourt's saying, "You told me to call you Rick," and stuff like that, to me that felt more like he's just lost in what he's doing, and he's losing a bit of his humanity effectively as he's getting really deep into all this, and he's working with these Lex Luthor people, and they're all very happy about it, and they're doing whatever. So anyway, that set up that Fleury would want to jump ship. Judo Master already, they kind of set that up in the other world when he was palling around with ads, and like that kind of set up that maybe there'd be some camaraderie there. So it did a good job of like teasing these characters, and obviously Bordeaux was someone that was set up throughout the entire last episode. Like she sees how Rick Flag is changing, and she goes to Harcourt, and that's kind of how we get onto this. Which, by the way, Big Belly Burger. I'm always a fan of the weird DC world references of Big Belly Burgers, Jitters Coffees, and Chocos, and I'm sure there's some other ones that I'm forgetting. But yeah, I think it is interesting. I have to admit that Bordeaux as a character is not one that I instantly recognize from the comics, because I don't think I've read the stuff that she's in. When I looked her up, it said Greg Rucka created her in Detective Comics, so I will definitely read that at some point, because I like Greg Rucka, and I plan on reading a lot of that era that I've missed of various comics. But she has been in Checkmate in the comics, as has Peacemaker, as has Vigilante, so these aren't weird characters to be in here. I wonder how deep they're going to go into it when they do get around to this, whether it's, in a Checkmate show, which is effectively season 3 of Peacemaker. Does that mean, are we doing the whole, Knight, Queen, King, like all the code names and all that stuff? I'm curious about that, but it's, I think it's cool. If nothing else, like forgetting, like, I wouldn't say that I have like a big attachment to Checkmate per se. There's definitely some good Checkmate comics, and like their part in the DC world has been good at pivotal parts of DC's history. But for me, I think this ending is more about, okay, we don't have to come up with new reasons why this group of characters are still a team and why they're still in each other's lives. They're now officially a part of a team that they've formed together because they want to. And that felt kind of nice. It felt kind of optimistic. Obviously, we got the dark cliffhanger where, Peacemaker's kidnapped and put in the other world, and there's some monsters in the trees that we have to worry about. Maybe a dinosaur, maybe the monster from Lost, maybe, I don't know. Maybe some of the dinosaurs from Jurassic League, if anyone read that comic. But I think them setting up like a new status quo where we don't have to worry about why they're working together. Now, the question is the start of the plot of like the potential show that we may be getting next with these characters, is that going to be about finding Peacemaker and getting them out? Is that just going to kind of happen right at the start because, like, the events of the Superman movie or maybe one of the other movies gets involved there? Or even Lanterns. I mean, I know Lanterns has been, Gunn said that Lanterns is going to be very pivotal at setting up some big stuff for the DCU. So I wonder if this Salvation stuff's also supposed to be a big thing, that if not, maybe that comes up in that show as well. It would not surprise me if it does. I wonder, like, what Lanterns is going to be in terms of, like, age rating, because it's on HBO, right? So are they going, like, full R rated? I don't imagine it's going to be as, like, you know, the humor. I don't like. I imagine it'll have some comedy. Like Hal Jordan's not exactly a character that's never cracking a joke, but I don't imagine it's going to be as funny as Peacemaker. I don't think they'll be going for that same crude humor that Peacemaker does. I feel like maybe they'll have like an R rating style kind of tone in terms of it being like a, because they've compared it to like a True Detective with space cops kind of thing, and that's kind of interesting. I'm excited to see what that is, but yeah. So I mean, obviously, again, like I was never going to go through all the episodes of the season and talk about anything. If I was to sort of critique it, you know, for like any like threads that I didn't like or whatever, I think the only thing is maybe that, well, it's great seeing Michael Rooker in a role. I do think the whole Hunting Eagley subplot for a couple of episodes was just kind of a bit whatever. I didn't really feel anything for it. It wasn't that funny, and then it was over, and it didn't really matter. I did really like the little moment in the finale though, with Eagley finally warming up to Economos. I always have to check his name. I can never remember it. But yeah, the wing goes on his shoulder. I thought that was kind of a sweet moment after like all their moments this season of economists like shouting at him and Eagley not helping when he's supposed to or whatever. So that was a sweet little moment as well. Yeah. So that's cool. I guess I would say that, you know, some of the episodes were really short, right? Especially like episodes like 4 through 7 were all like between the 30 and 35-minute mark, give or take. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want anything to be padded to like artificially get to a runtime, but at a certain point, I do wonder if like some of these episodes should have been combined into one episode. Not to pad one out just to be longer and still have 8 episodes. I'm thinking maybe shorten it to 6 episodes, but just have a couple of longer ones, because you know the episode that ended with well, not ended with, well, maybe I mean ended with, there was an episode building up to Chris making his choice to go into the other universe for good. And I remembered thinking at the end of that episode that that was fine, but I feel like it was all set up, and you probably could combine it with the next episode. Like, so I'm probably talking about 5 and 6 at the very least. Like, I feel like it could have been combined into one really great 1 hour long episode. So I'm not saying that it should always happen, but there was enough like 30 or so minute episodes of the show in a row that I was starting to think, oh, come on, this is almost a sitcom in length with these runtimes. And I don't think season 1 was like that. So don't get me wrong, on the one hand, I don't want them padding things, but in a weird way, you've almost padded it out in terms of episode count. You've not stretched it in terms of like the pacing of the story in each episode, but you've cut it up into smaller bites to last 8 weeks. So I think they could have maybe condensed it into like 6 episodes. And I'm not saying cut any runtime down. That's exactly my point. I'm saying take a couple of those 30-minute episodes, make it 160-minute episodes, and I don't even think you'd have to change very much to make it work, honestly. I think, yeah, so episode 7's in a weird place because episode 7 was pretty short, but I think episode 6's ending does have to be a cliffhanger at the end of an episode. It's too good to not have that be the ending cliffhanger. So I guess 7 has to be this 30 or so minute episode in between that and then this, because this finale was almost an hour long. So there was a lot to get through in this one, but yeah. So I mean, it's a minor quibble ultimately, because it's the sort of thing where it's more of an annoyance when you're watching the show weekly. Now, for the rest of time, when people watch this, they're going to just kind of binge through it, probably in just a couple of sittings. Honestly, this is not a show you have to spread out over like weeks of watching. You can watch the whole thing in like 2 nights quite comfortably without it feeling like you're doing marathon viewings. So it's not a problem going forward, but it is something just to mention on that initial release schedule. It felt a little bit, shortchanged some weeks, but not without like significant advancement in plots most of the time. Once we got to like Chris trying to go over to the other world, or even just the first time he spent a whole episode there, pretty much. That's when the season really got cooking to me. Like the first 2 episodes were setting up everything, and obviously you had the ending of episode 1 was when we introduced the alternate Peacemaker and him killing him. So episode 2, was episode 2 the first one? Did he spend the whole time there for an episode? I don't think he did. I think that was like a couple later. Was it not? Maybe that was episode 3. I don't know. This is the problem with doing a review at the end of the season, is that they're kind of blurring together. But regardless, super fun, right? Very, very funny, entertaining. The characters are mostly very likable. I enjoyed them bantering with each other pretty much every time they were on screen together, and I do think there's some genuine heart to some of the character stories that are here, and alternate vigilante actually being like a force of good on that world regardless. Now he may still have a lot of the same problematic methods and like attitude problems that the regular vigilante does, but hey, on that world it's like, hey, go to town. Like, go to town over there. What do we care? So no, I had a good time. I think if you're invested in the DC universe, it's worth checking out. And I know Gunn keeps saying, oh, some of the stuff this is set up is super important. And while I'm sure he's technically correct in that maybe this Salvation thing, for example, is going to be important in something else, I don't think he's written this with the intention that like kids who go to watch like the next Superman movie are going to feel compelled to like fill in the gaps by going back and watching Peacemaker season 2, because they shouldn't be watching that because they're kids, right? At least under a certain age. So I think sometimes he maybe over like emphasizes some things like that. And I get it. He's excited. It is great having this more cohesive kind of like world that's being built with someone kind of actually shepherding it. Excited to see, what comes next, which I think Lanterns is the next thing we're getting. I think that's coming out before any of the movies next year. So excited to see what that brings. So yeah, obviously I haven't talked about everything in the show, but I thought I'd give some general feelings, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So I had a good time. I was excited to watch it every week, So there's almost nothing more positive that I can say than that. Like, I was actively excited to watch it every week. And when I started watching this, I was still watching Alien Earth, and I was actively like fearing watching that show. I was putting it off. I was, oh no, I need to watch an Alien Earth. I was happy to watch a Peacemaker, just like I'm happy to watch a Gen V right now. So it's nice to enjoy something. But that's my thoughts on Peacemaker Season 2. Obviously, there's a bunch of stuff that I didn't talk about throughout the season. And obviously, we also have the brother was left alive. Like, Harcourt was about to go, like, Ripper Giles on Keith. That's a reference to the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for anyone who didn't get it. She was about to kill him, and she just got interrupted, and that's why he's still alive. But you have to imagine that is a thread that is going to be brought up later. Now, they didn't intend on leaving him alive, actually. That was something that came out after the episode aired. That originally in the script, he was just going to be killed by Harcourt. So, I assume that, and I think that's why there's no follow-up on it yet in the finale, but I expect that at some point we're going to get some follow-up in that. Maybe he will become Peacemaker's true nemesis in a future season, either of Peacemaker or this new Checkmate show. Either way, it's almost kind of nice, though, that it's going to be a group title now and not just Peacemaker, because as much as Peacemaker's entertaining, it's an ensemble show. Like, I feel like the characters are mostly pretty equal, and I would be down for more time for some of the others. So cool. Let me know what you thought of Peacemaker Season 2 in the comments. You can like, subscribe, all that stuff. Helps out a bunch if you do. Of course, you can support all the I almost said something really... Like, I almost said content incorrectly with a vowel that would have made it a very, very harsh word for YouTube. Which reminds me, one of my laughs in the finale was Econo was trying to like make a distraction, and he just like makes up a sports game that never happened, and then when he tries to like cover it up, he just starts yelling like obscenities at some people. He calls Otis, of all people, he drops a C-bomb on him. That was good. Anyway, yeah. Support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or via YouTube membership. Thanks to everyone who already does. I do appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?